Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Som TV podcast. I'm your host, Jason Wise. On today's episode, I'm going to have my friend, Raj Parr, a renowned sommelier and winemaker, define his entire life through 9 bottles. He is going to take the bottles that took him from being a barback, working in a restaurant, to a sommelier, all the way through the different iterations that he was as a winemaker and what he is now, which is a farmer, I would say. And it's interesting to see kind of how his taste changed throughout time and kind of where his career went based on the bottles that he loved at that time. So I'm really looking forward to that story. Before I do, I want to tell everybody listening, did you know we offer bulk subscriptions to Som TV? If you are a winery, a restaurant, a country club, or you work for an employer and you think all of the employees and everybody there would like a subscription, we offer incredible discounts. Whether you have 5 people on your staff or 1,000, we can accommodate. And you know, a lot of the people that we have on these podcasts are people who have this because we know that their audience is listening and we want to make sure our guests align with that. So if you are interested in getting Som TV for your staff, there is no greater resource for training, entertainment, education in the wine and food space than Som TV. Email hello@somtv.com. hello@somtv.com. All right, everybody, without further ado, my friend, Raj Parr. Raj, it's been a minute. I've missed you. Glad to have you back on the pod.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
I keep looking inward right now when it comes to wine, and everybody's either, in one place or another, and I know harvest is going on for a lot of people and they're crazy, but I have a little bit of a window with you because you don't harvest now for a couple weeks. We're recording this right now towards the end of September. And so I thought it would be interesting to go through your career, but not so much as in the way of your job, but more of what you chose to do with your career and how you kind of came about it. For people listening, you've obviously probably seen the first Som movie and a lot of the stuff that I've directed and made. Raj, you're one of the most important influences I've ever had. I don't know if you remember this, but things like Domaine de la Romanée-Conti and all of these Grand Cru wines and my first real Chablis, truly great grower champagnes, I never had any of that stuff till I met you. And when I was filming, I'm just going to say this really quick, I will never forget when I was filming at RN74 in San Francisco. You would constantly come up to me with a glass and everyone around just go, what is this? What is this? And I remember this one where you put it in front of me, and I talked about this on another podcast recently, where you put this glass of red wine, you had me taste it. It was a very small amount of wine in the glass, and I smelled it and I tasted it, and I just had never in my life tasted anything like this. I had no idea what it was. I thought it might be Burgundy, but I hadn't tasted enough Burgundies, and it was a Latache, and it was the first time I ever tasted anything of that kind of quality, and I couldn't believe that you would have shared any of that with me while you were in the middle of, service and working. And I just want you to know, like, those are the moments that kind of made me do what I do now, go all over the world, meet winemakers. So
thank you. Well, I mean, what is wine, right? It's like wine was just a beverage for a long, long time, and religion and between wars and everything else that happens with wine. But everything was wine that we share. So knowledge that we share. So we are talking today, and wine is a center topic, but there's so many people around us, friends and family and people we don't even know, who are connected in one way with wine. So
no, it is true. I've found it to be a very interesting thing to put at the center of talking about other things. And so I asked you today to pick essentially 9-10 bottles that define your path through wine. And we would talk about kind of your journey and why you chose it and how you chose it. And it doesn't have to be heavy or anything. It's more of just kind of how and where you got, because I know in speaking with you personally, I know that your journey in this stuff is really just beginning, honestly. And for someone with such a big career and such a lot of movement behind you, it's amazing to say that. I want to start with the first wine on our list, one that would be, the way I've written it, kind of the one that opened you up to tasting wine and made you realize this was the thing you want to continue doing. It's not yet a job, but you tasted a wine where you said, okay, this is something that I would devote my life to potentially. What is the first wine we're going to open up on this conversation, you and I?
Oh, it has to be the Epiphany wine, the wine that kind of I first had in 96 when I was a barback at Rubicon with Larry Stone, and he had given his assistant at the time a taste of a wine, and she smelt it and she left it in the bar. She never tasted it, just smelt it, and she walked away. And then at the end of the night, maybe like an ounce of wine and hadn't been tasted white wine. And I was cleaning out the bar and I said, Larry, can I taste this wine you gave Rebecca? I said, she said, yeah, of course you can taste it. And he walked away. And then I tasted it and I was alone. It was closing up the bar. It was like maybe near midnight. And I smell it and I was like, huh. I tasted it. It was just this crazy light show in my brain that how can wine smell and taste like that? It was Ravenel Chablis Le Clos, 1986. It was a 10-year-old wine at the time. This is wine. I mean, I was completely shocked and yeah, pretty wild.
Ravenel Chablis is a place that I've been lucky enough. I mean, the first Ravenel Chablis I ever had was you poured it for me. It was a Leclos, and it would have been. I'm trying to think if it was early 2000s. I think it was. It had some age on it even then. That was in like 2010, maybe. That was back when you could actually afford that stuff a little bit, kind of. Now it's like impossible. But what was it about Chablis that made you? It blew my mind when I tasted it. I didn't know Chardonnay could be anything like that. I didn't even know that. I knew that I would have to, it would be years before I truly understood kind of why I liked it and what it was made of and all of that. I've been fortunate enough now to film there and in that region since, but what is it about that wine?
And I didn't realize this a few years later when I went to Chablis, it tastes exactly like the place because it's just like, it's crushed rocks. It's just Kimmeridgian chalk. And when you walk the vineyard, it's just top of the hill is all rock. You keep walking down the hill and get some clay. And when you taste the wine, it's exactly like that. When it's young, it's kind of wound up and just smells and tastes like just crushed rock, like just chalk. And then as it ages, it unfolds into this amazing kind of light nuts, some white chocolate, like very, really, really kind of flinty. And all the minerality unfolds into this creamy texture, which is very classic of Chablis, very classic of the place. Yeah.
So what was the wine then, the next bottle that made you want to become a sommelier?
Well, that was also Rubicon. It was maybe a few months after that bottle. We hosted Jean-Louis Chave and Gerard Chave, and they all came for dinner. And I guess maybe that night when they came, I was a food runner because I was still, I didn't become full on assistant sommelier to Larry. I was still kind of early on, and we had my first wine from Domaine Jean-Louis Chave. It was a Hermitage 78. And, having no Syrah experience at all, and the first Syrah you ever had in memory is 78 Chave Hermitage. I was like, wow, this is like, the complexity, the depth, because wine, and this is also in 96. So the wine was, 20 some years old. It was for wine from Domaine Chave. It's still a youthful young wine. And I'm like, wow, we have to learn more. I have to learn more about what this is and how does one get to it. And, the journey of wine is so complicated, especially for early on. You don't really understand it. I've been to the place. That was when I was like, okay, I got to read and study more. Cause at the time I was still on a 6-month visa to kind of just work at Rubicon and then, go back to India. I was not planning on staying here, That wine definitely opened my eyes. I said, okay, I gotta learn more about wine.
Yeah, that's incredible. Obviously, I have a storied past with Chave Hermitage. It's the wine that, I mean, it's the greatest wine I've ever had. The 69 is a wine that changed my life. That's sort of when I realized it was almost like when you get made into the mafia and you can't leave anymore. That was me. When I had that wine, I was like, all right, I can't leave anymore. I'll be in wine forever. It's
Yeah.
like, it's the most incredible thing. And then you mix the fact that family goes back, what? How many?
Yeah, 14 generations. Yeah. It's pretty
That's
wild.
absolutely wild. So far, your list is pretty incredible. All right. So now you're a sommelier. Do you have a bottle in your past that made you go, now I'm willing to open up a wine bar? I now have had so much experience and so much love, and I still have so much to learn, but I want to plant a place where I can now show other people the stuff that I love and hopefully make some money, which I don't know if you ever did.
Yeah, no. we are wealth with friends and knowledge and experiences, not the bank. Yeah, there were a couple of them. I mean, definitely, we opened the wine bar focusing on Burgundy, and that was such a big part of my life at the time in San Francisco, all the wine lists I ever wrote would focus on Burgundy. I was like, let's open a restaurant, focus on Burgundy. In 2009, Burgundy was still kind of, we had just still not, of course, it was important and it was a big part of the world of wine, but it was still, you could still find decent bottles and you can still find rare. And it was a wine that kind of really is at the highest level of wine. It's not a wine that I think I've only drank it twice in my life, which kind of told me that, again, you're back to another Chardonnay, but this is from one of the great vineyards in Burgundy, Chevalier Montrachet. And this was a Domaine Dauphiné 99. And
this Montrachet, so what was it about it? I mean, why is this so special?
Again, this wine was, I probably had it in 2004, 2005. So it was a 5-year-old wine. So it was Chevalier Montrachet. It was like the intensity, the purity. I mean, we all know that Grand Cru white Burgundy is at the highest level. It's like, the intensity of, and when you have that wine, it's like, how can wine get any better? How can it was that and like 62 La Tâche. It was like those two bottles, and I mean, these wines are rare and super expensive and probably never drink it again. But at the time, it was accessible. People actually drank this. It wasn't out of context. And I mean, there were so many others that kind of told me that this is, you have to dedicate your life to learning about Burgundy. And it's still, even when I go back now, it's just, even though we don't drink these wines and there's different kinds of wine we drink now and there's a different ideology between what.
Of course. And we'll get to that for sure. But
yeah, but it was just the elegance and the purity and the flavor profile is, I mean, there's a reason Chardonnay is one of the greatest white grapes.
It oftentimes does not get the credit it deserves, but people are like, oh, I love white Burgundy, but I'm not so big on Chardonnay. You're like, okay. All right. So RN74 was, for me, it was a home base in San Francisco. I mean, I was literally a place that it was one of the first places I'd get off the plane. I'd go straight to RN74 when it was there. I miss it very much. It was still there. You made a big pivot and you made a decision that you were starting to think seriously about growing wine, farming wine, making wine. But I think it started with making, and we'll get into the growing and farming later. Do you have a bottle in particular that made you go, I don't mean I can do this, meaning you could make the wine you tasted, but the fact that I can make wine. What was the bottle that made you go, I can do this? I want to do this at least.
I guess it was one. I'm not sure I can do that. I mean, definitely one of the most important wines in my life was one made by William Sellium, Bert William, who I later on, end of his life, I became good friends thanks to my friend Drake Whitcraft, and we just happened to spend a lot of time with Bert William, and it was his 86 Rocchioli Pinot Noir, which is a great vineyard in Russian River Valley, and he was the first person to kind of really, make American Pinot Noir at that level, and also charge real money for it. So it was, it was from the 80s. Him and Ed Sellium, they made amazing wines. And in a garage, I was lucky enough to go visit them once, maybe in sometime in the late, I guess before they left. It was maybe in 97, I think I went to see them. The last vintage was 97, 98. It was amazing to taste that 86 Rocchioli, and I'm like, wow, okay, well, if Bert will make this wine, maybe you should try to make Pinot Noir. So that was definitely a big influence in learning how to make wine. Then later on, when I got to know Bert, I remember he gave me sheets of technical, when he picked it, or what the pH was, or the alcohol was. And sitting and talking to him and drinking wine when I was living in Santa Barbara, it was amazing to hear the stories. And even till today, I use that. Even, he used to ferment and make his wine in these kind of old milk, these dairy tanks, like to separate them.
Yep.
And he had like a bunch of them, and I have two of them now, and we still ferment wines in those tanks. And it's a very special way of making wine. And I definitely learned a lot from him, first just through his wine, and then just spending time with him. It was what an amazing human being.
Those dairy tanks are very interesting. We've obviously filmed there, and they still use them at William Sellium. Really interesting. They're so like an inverted tank. It looks so they're so strange that to think of, using those for making wine, but it's kind of brilliant. So then you want to make wine. You maybe have played with making wine. Now it's time to find an investor, partners, really make a real company. What's the bottle that convinced you that it was worth throwing your life into this?
There were so many, but I mean, the wine that kind of stuck in my head because when I was, I spent a lot of time in France, especially when we wrote our second book. Me and Jordan wrote a second book.
Jordan McKay,
And
yeah.
Jordan, yeah. So we spent a bunch of time in Paris and going through always like, home base was Paris. And I was fortunate to drink the wines of Jacques Maillet, fairly unknown in the wine world because he retired after the 2015 vintage and sold his vineyards and stuff. But in Paris, he was still small amounts of wine in the Savoie. It was not a lot of it wasn't a big production. So he was making Pinot Noir, Mondouse,
Okay.
Gamay, and this one blend he made was called Autrement, which was a blend of Gamay, Mondouse, and Pinot Noir. And so when I first came to Cambria and when I first drove into what is now Phelan Farm, I looked at the geography and looked at the place. I'm like, wow, this is like looks so much like Savoie or Jura and kind of in this forest. And the first thing I did was I started to graft Mondouse and then Gamay. So the very first wine we started producing, and our main wine at Phelan Farm is the Autrement. And I never met Jacques, but the vineyards were taken over by the Cortez family. So I asked their permission if I can use the name Autrement, and it's an homage to them and to Jacques who made the wines. And hopefully one day I can go to the Savoie and taste the wines. And that wine was like, we had one last night. I opened one bottle or one Magnum every year on my birthday. So we opened one last night and it was magical. It was truly, truly, truly magical. Yeah.
Yeah, well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, how did you hear about him? How did you even find out he existed?
Oh, I didn't. I just, in Paris, they had the wines on the list and I had it at a restaurant in Paris. And that's how it just kind of, and no one had heard about the wine. Even now, most people don't know who he is because there's very little left in the world because they were like, so I've hoarded some and I've had them, so I opened them.
You went to a path and you were making several wines. You had a number of brands that you were working on. Do you have a wine that you can think of in this time that kind of embodies when it was working for you and kind of when things were in sync? Because you're going to take another shift here and you're going to go, I think, you're going to turn to farming. So this is a bottle I'm thinking of. I like to think of your chapters as this is a very winemaking focused. I know you cared so much about site and farming, but now you've taken that to a much higher level. And so I'm curious if there's a bottle that when it was working for you and you were working on all these brands and you were really stretched, in my opinion, you were stretched pretty thin, Raj. You were working on so much all over the place. I didn't know a human being who traveled as much as you. I'm just curious if you can think of a wine that brings you to that time because you're about to change things big time.
Yeah, I was just curious and, we were at the time making wine in a certain style and following a traditional kind of style of making wine and
like a Burgundian type style, right?
Burgundian style wine. Yeah, the wine's, it's made in, a certain style. It's, a certain style of sulfur or whatever, barrels, and it's fined and filtered and all the kind of
I remember you using the old screw presses and things just
yeah,
because
yeah,
you were like,
yeah.
that's what they used in Burgundy and it ages really well. And you were like, maybe this is part of it.
When you have partners, you have to you make the wine that you make collectively. It's not something you necessarily want to make or you need to make, but that's just the way it is. And yeah, but there was a wine which kind of, it still is so, I still cherish it. It's a wine made by Jean-François Ganva and another Chardonnay. Kind of randomly, we have so many Chardonnays on this list because it is a grape I admire, I love, and this is an old like a 100-year-old vineyard which he bottles only in magnums called Marguerite. And I remember drinking, I want to say it was 2011 maybe. And these wines are very small quantities, only made in Magnum. And I was just like, wow, this is, because, you're making a wine and, everyone's, Chardonnay is Nouveau, Chardonnay is this. And you have this wine, which is like no new oak. It's aged for 4 years in large barrels, and it's bottled without any finding or filtration, and nothing added. It's just, like, this is just insane. This is yeah, no, it's
And
still
where are they made? Where's the
in the
where are they
Jura.
made?
Yeah,
In the
this is
Jura.
made in the
Wow.
southern part of the Jura, and yeah, the town of Rotalier, where Jean-Francois is based. This wine, and then the Tissot Rose Massal. He makes the pink Chardonnay.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know the
It's fantastic. I love
Yeah,
those
so
wines.
it's so like you have these wines, and like these are opposite ways and opposite styles of wines we're making, and I'm just like, wow, this is the future, for me. I'm not for the world, but it's that was what I kind of that's what I saw in the horizon.
This is great. So then you pivot, and I know that we're going to condense a lot of your heart and passion here, but you moved to Cambria, which is a small town, kind of. I mean, I'm trying to think if people even know what San Simeon is, but I'd be like, it's near San Simeon on the coast of California. It's a beautiful place. If you're looking to take your boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife and go for a weekend, no better place than Cambria. But anywho, so you went there, found this site. I want to know, what was the wine, because your entire ethos changed here. You sort of became less intervention. I don't know if you use the word natural. I don't know, but you started, you partnered with PBG in Santa Barbara, all natural wines at a really great Indian restaurant there in Santa Barbara. I'm curious what it was that made you turn your focus. Do you have a bottle where you said, this is kind of the way I want to do it now? I know the Jura and all that peaked your, put it on your horizon, but what was the one that made you go, okay, this is, and there's probably hundreds of bottles and lots of experience and all that stuff, but can you think of one?
Yeah, and there's a few, I mean, the two most important bottles when you think of wine from these great growers and these great producers. Of course, now it seems almost like cliche because they are now the most sought after wines. Like the one, my second epiphany wine was, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago. A friend of mine opened a magnum of Auvernois, Pierre Auvernois Pulsar 99. And it's Pulsar, it's a humble grape. It's from this one town in the Jura, in Poupillon, and maybe today maybe too trendy or too kind of, but this wine is just profound, and I was lucky to go and visit the domain a few times, and it just was my epiphany. I was like, such an amazing, humble, delicious grape has aged so gracefully for 20 years, and it has every flavor and everything you want in a great, great wine. And again, a wine made in the highest level of farming and made just super simply in the cellar. I mean, yeah, we're never going to make a wine like that, but just to kind of have that. I mean, I have a small amount of pulsar planted in here, and it's so hard to grow. It's, yeah, you just kind of learn how to kind of figure it out. And then the other wine, which was like, again, back in my travel days, and we drank a bottle of 2010 Belluard Lefeu. So this is a grape called Granger, which is a grape grown in one place, one small town of Ais in the Savoie, not far from Geneva. And again, an isotaric grape, and we ended up planting. We have 2.5 acres planted here now. But again, having that wine where it was 10 years ago, and then having it again twice in the same year, like in 2025, you're just like, oh my God, I definitely feel I made the right decision to plant this here in Cambria. So, all these kind of inspirations, and you bring it back here, and and we harvest these grapes like end of October, early November. So it's like,
It's
it's
crazy.
not all experiments work, not all ideas work, but so far so good.
So let's get into, what is the bottle you drink now? Aside from some of these great ones and things you've stored and whatever, what do you drink on a Wednesday night when you're opening something? I mean, this is a big shift from the wines we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah.
You're not growing any big, powerful reds that I'm aware of down there. You're growing
No.
these more delicate. But what do you drink now?
I mean, again, I can name a few, but now mostly drink wine of my friends, and wines that I know are from the soul, from the heart, and farming from really the spirit of the person. So, I mean, we don't have a lot of it, but one of my whenever it's producer called Henri Chauvet from the Auvergne. I mean, I've had a chance to meet him a few times, and I've been to the state, but I've never to Auvergne. But wines like that, still enjoy. Beaujolais. My friends Domaine Chapelle in
Oh
Beaujolais,
yes.
Michel and David, and because it's like what drives us about wine. It's the connection. It's of course deliciousness, but it's the connection, right? You're drinking a bottle of wine and you're sharing with friends and family, and you maybe you don't see your friends that often, but you drink the wine. It's like, wow, this is like so happy. It's like so that's like simple wine. I drink now we're officially into summer here because our summer is usually between September 15th and like October 15th or later. So yeah, but mostly in Spain, I drink lots of Sangiovese, and another grape I never drank back in the day. It's Chianti is kind of again with real people I know who have worked with me, and it's simple, delicious wines. Drink. Also we don't drink a lot unless there's get-togethers because you have to wake up early, and
Yeah.
farm life is farm life.
So now you talk to me really quick about all the different grapes that you've planted at Phelan Farms. You have
Yeah.
Pulsard.
Yeah, so we have Pulsar, Trousseau, Gamay. Of course, we have Pinot Noir, Chardonnay. We have Chardonnay Rose, so pink skin Chardonnay. Savignon. Then we have
Sauvignon.
Mondos, Granger, Altesse, and Jacquer. And then we have a little bit, just a very little bit of Mencia.
Okay.
As an outlier, it's not Jura Saba variety, but my really good friends from Envinate from Spain, we got some cuttings, and yeah, I love like one of my favorite wines they make a lot of from wines from Canary Islands and from Ribera Sacra, but Ribera Sacra they make Barcelo Soane and Camino Novo, and these are like amazing expressions of Mencia. They are world class wines. They're like
Oh yeah.
so and seeing the vineyards and visiting them, it just makes me so happy. So I make a little bit, make a barrel or two of Mencia, and every time, I open a bottle of either theirs or ours, and just the conversation, it brings me back to some amazing human beings. And my friend Jose Pastor, who's kind of, who tastes the wines and tells me, he's honest, he's a very honest guy. So it's all of this is just a combination of friendship and relationships and, what I couldn't do in my past. And now we're doing it here in Cambria. So yeah.
Is there a wine that you want to make before you die? Something stylistically, or a grape, or
one of the biggest tragedies in the wine world today is that you have tasted or drink these wines and they become so celebrated they can't afford it anymore. And the problem, Bordeaux has been has made the most amazing wines. I look back in the day, and I used to have my top 10 list of wines I ever drank when I was working in restaurants. There's always 5, 6, 7 were Bordeaux's. And now we don't drink them Bordeaux because it's not fashionable. It's expensive. It's very expensive.
oh yes.
But those wines, like another unbelievable wine. And if you ask any collector also and any writer who's been around for a while, it's like the 45 Mouton. But you always wonder, like, what did that wine taste when it was 2 years old, right? What did it taste? Was it drinkable, undrinkable? I remember once asking the late Henri Jaillet, like, what should a wine be? And he said, oh, wine should be delicious from day one and should age and live as long as it can. But, you don't have to make the wine to live long. So that was always my goal. I want the wine to be delicious. I want the wine to be delicious when it's bottled, delicious 5 years later. And hopefully, if you're lucky, it's going to age longer. But to make the wine in a style, it has to, age long, or it has to, needs this. I think I don't believe in that. So I do believe that wines will age as they need to. And you make
Yeah.
the wine the best you can. And you grow the best you can.
Makes a lot of sense. Raj, tell people who are listening where they can get your wines. You are working your butt off making these wines, and they're delicious, and people should know how to get them. So
Yeah.
where can they order your wines?
Thank you. Yeah, so we have Phelan Farm wines, and we make small amounts. So we only make like maybe 10,000 bottles, 1,000 cases around that. So it's not a whole lot. So, and for me, we have some distribution around. Might find it in some wine shops, but yeah, directly from our website. We also make some bridge wines, which is from the Negos, from purchase grapes. So bridge wines and Phelan Farm, they both are available on our website. It's parcollective.com.
Parcollective.com. Okay.
Yeah, that's my new entity. because it's Phelan Farm and Bridge Wines and a few other wines we make. So the vineyards we plant are still going to come online. So it's all under the collective, which is we have a website, we have a tasting room in Cambria, we have small event space, the vineyards are around it. So it's a nice place to hang out in the afternoon, taste some wines, and not just hang out, do nothing with the kids and dogs. And
we'll be up there. We're going to be filming with you shortly. So, this is just a preempt of a lot of stuff to come with you. It's nice to have a little bit of a window to talk to you, but we're going to come up and complicate your life. So I look forward to it.
Yeah, come anytime. It's we're going to get, we're going to start getting busy, but it doesn't matter because, we always love having people here and sharing a meal and sharing a bottle or two. Or
people listening need to know how good of a chef you are. You are one of the best cooks ever. So if you ever get a chance to convince Raj to cook for you, you need to say yes immediately. So I'll put Raj's personal cell phone number in the show notes. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I don't answer my phone, so you can put it. It's no problem at all.
Well, it's good to talk to you. I really appreciate the journey, and keep at it, Raj. You're doing great stuff, keeping the soul of wine going. So it's good. It's good to talk to you, man.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you so much.
I want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen to this episode. It really means a lot. If you love the Som TV podcast, please make sure you leave a great review, give us a high star rating, whatever it is you do, wherever you listen. It would mean a lot to us. And if you are an organization, a restaurant, a winery, a country club, anything that has a number of people who would benefit from having a Som TV membership for education, entertainment, just staying up to date with what's going on in the culinary world, email us, hello@somtv.com. We are able to accommodate incredible discounts for bulk subscriptions, whether it's just a few or many thousands. I would like to thank John Adams, our producer for this episode, and of course, I'd love to thank Raj Parr for joining us and spending his time. And I want to thank you most of all for listening. Everybody have a great glass of wine, and we will talk to you next week.